Hey there, folks. This is Lindy Ford, registered dietitian, clinical and licensed nutritionist, and nutrition detective. So we are starting a new series today. It is about fats. It's called The Skinny on Fats, and I'm going to do a series of these different talks about fats because fats are so misunderstood, and we've lumped them in one category and thought that they were all the same, and they are not. Fats are not all created equal. So it's exciting. I just want to tell you, I remember in college, during my summer break, I was an intern, and actually that was a fancy word for gopher, and I did that in Washington, D.C. at the Naval Research Laboratory, and I remember succinctly, this was way back, I remember back in those days that the women in the office, what I did all day is I just went from lab to lab and did whatever needed to be done and walked probably 3 or 4 miles a day, but I remember being in the office and the women were all on a diet. And I remember their diet was counting fat grams because that's what people did back then. They didn't count anything else. They counted fat grams. And it was really interesting. They started that at the beginning of the summer, and by the end of the summer, they all got fatter. And they all probably got a little crankier too. And there's a reason for that because that is old science. And it led a lot of people astray. A lot of people thought that they needed to go low fat. And so they went low fat and they gained weight by doing that. Because we know so much more about physiology today. Actually, that was a myth that was perpetrated in the 1950s by Ansel Keys. And that research really has been debunked these days. And a lot of the information about sugars were squelched by the Sugar Council. And so a lot of the good information never made it to the general public. So we were all taught, right? If you remember back in the 80s, 90s, and even the early 2000s, that low fat was good and low fat dairy was so wonderful. Do y'all remember Snackwells? I don't even know, do they still make those stinking things? Do you remember Intamin's pastries? They used to say low fat on them back in the 90s or whenever. Well, what happened was, we all know this, they took the fat out, but when you take fat out, you take mouthfeel out, you take taste out. So in order to compensate for that, they just threw in more sugar, which made all of us get fatter. And the obesity rates went up in the 80s and 90s and have steadily climbed even to this day. So what we're going to do, the first fat that I'm going to start with is my all-time favorite. I call it the king of fats, and that is the omega-3 fatty acids. I love me some omega-3 fatty acids. I actually got a lot of this information from my own work, which is in an article on my website called The Amazing Magic Oil. And you know, about 90%, yeah, guys, 90% of Americans are deficient in omega-3 fatty acids, and man, that is one that you do not want to be deficient in. So I'm so glad you're watching this. So what is it? It is a polyunsaturated fatty acid, and it is essential. It's called an essential fatty acid because we can't make it ourselves. We have to get it from food, and there are 2 ways to get it. One is through the plant source, which is called alpha-linolenic acid. And that's where the vegans and vegetarians are going to get their omega-3s. And that's going to come from chia seeds and flax seeds and walnuts and even leafy green vegetables. But here's the problem with the ALAs. You have to eat a lot of them. I mean, you have to eat a boatload. Only about 10 to 20% of ALAs even get converted into what our bodies can use, which is EPA and DHA. Those are the 2 constituents of omega-3 fatty acids that our bodies need desperately. We need them for so many functions. We need them for our heart. We need them for our moods. It's really interesting. The countries that get the most omega-3 fatty acids, guess what? They have the lowest depression rates. So why is it important? Let me just give you a few things. This is the short list. This is actually just a few things that omega-3 fatty acids can do for you. And that is lower your triglycerides. They lower your risk for heart disease. They improve the stiffness and the inflammation of your joints with arthritis. They improve every itis out there. I must say, itis actually means inflammation. So if you hear anybody who has an itis, that means that they have inflammation. Like diverticulitis is inflammation of the colon. So any itis out there is going to be helped by omega-3 fatty acids. That's a really cool thing. They lower blood pressure, they lower mood disorders and anxiety. Big, huge one. And they lower blood sugar, so they help diabetics. And they also help with lowering the risk of Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and ADHD. So a bunch of brain benefits there as well. And for babies' developments, even in the womb, and this is why I think my children are so bright, and they're really smart, is because I got a lot of omega-3s when I was carrying them, and that helps with babies' brain development. So the American diet really doesn't have enough of that, the typical American diet, so we have to do something about that. What we have, and we'll talk more about these in another video, is omega-6s. Now, what is an omega-6? What is that? That's a polyunsaturated as well, but it's corn, soybean, shortening, those types of oils that actually are essential as well, but we get too stinking much of them. We get so many of them from crackers and cookies and salad dressing that they actually compete with the omega-3s. It should be a 1-on-1 ratio between omega-3s and omega-6s. Guess what it is in the American diet? Yeah, it's like 20 to 1, 20 times more omega-6s than omega-3s. There's a problem, Houston. There's a huge, huge problem with that, which we have to circumvent by getting more omega-3s and less omega-6s. Now, fish is a great way to get your DHA and EPA. You don't have to, the body, like with the plant sources, doesn't have to convert it. It uses it very efficiently. So fish is really the only way of doing that, and to get the EPA and the DHA. And that's great, except a lot of our fish has been adulterated, unfortunately, with PCBs and mercury. So, you know, we have an issue with fish, so we're really careful about the fish that we choose. It's great. I would suggest more the oily fish like salmon and mackerel and sardines and that kind of fish. They have less of those contaminants. So fish is a great way of doing that. But I always tell most of my patients, and I do it, I give my husband a supplement of really good quality fish oil. Now there are some things that I can tell you, you don't need to worry about the company or the purity of the product, like vitamin D. I can tell you to go to the drugstore and get vitamin D, but not with fish oil. You have to be so careful. And I have listed, not all of them, there are thousands of brands out there, and there's really hundreds of good ones, but I've listed some that I really like Norwegian Naturals is a really good brand. So there are certain ones that are I know have gone through a distillation process, that we know that the fish are pure, that we know that there's no PCBs, or there's no mercury, no contaminations in that fish oil. So it's probably a good idea, unless you're eating fish almost every day, like many countries, and the countries that do have the lower heart disease rates, have the lower depression rates, but they're eating fish for breakfast. I don't do that either. So if you're eating fish every day, you probably don't need to supplement, but if you're not, you really need to supplement with a good quality fish oil. So anyway, that is my summary of omega-3 fatty acids. I love them. I would implore you to get more of them into your diet, because they're going to benefit you in so many ways. So stay tuned to my next video. It's a series, Skinny on Fats, and you can also look at my website on the Amazing Magic Oil, lindyfordwellness.com. So thank you so much for watching today. Please subscribe, please, to this YouTube channel. Like me on Facebook, as well as follow me on Twitter. Thanks so much.